driveway easement is between those two
Correct.
lots.
Yeah, but nothing is being removed from 19. The easement is simply being placed upon the lot. But those lots are owned by the developers, John and Mary Heineman.
So is this driveway with this cul-de-sac at the end of it that goes to 4 and 3, is that an option? Or is it one or the other, or is it both? It is the driveway that comes through to the cul-de-sac.
Are you talking about this one here?
Yes, is that an option, or are 3 and 4 getting both of those accesses, or are they getting one of those accesses?
So a driveway can serve no more than 2 lots. So this driveway here could be used by 3 and 4. 3 could also use this driveway here. 4 could also use this southern driveway. Sorry, I should probably hold it up so you can see it better. This one here. So there are options.
Is 4 guaranteed both of those accesses?
Yes, because 5, the intended access is right here off of Big Sky Drive. So 3 could use this one. 3 could use this one. 4 could use this from the south, or this from the north.
So Bernadette, you're shaking your head that they're not guaranteed those accesses.
Well, this driveway here off of the cul-de-sac, actually could not be used until this became a road. And so it does in fine print say for future development. So it's an easement for future development, but it could not be used until this was built to subdivision road standards and became a formal subdivision road.
That's correct, I'm sorry, I should have explained that better.
So as a driveway, it can only service 2, so it's just for B1 and B2 at this time.
At
until
this
it's
point.
made into a road. Okay. Would the same be true of the driveway easement for B and 4, B3 and B4? If those wanted to be further subdivided, you would have to turn that into a road, or could you, as it's just a driveway easement?
You couldn't, it'd have to be 60 foot wide.
Okay. So as you can only have 2 lots utilizing a driveway, that is okay for B3 and B4? Does it matter that, well, B9 wouldn't need it? So B5 has to be serviced by Big Sky Drive, right?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay,
That is correct.
all right. So Spring Street needs to be built up to a county road, or up to county road standards to that driveway easement, correct?
That is correct.
Does Big Sky Drive need to be built up as well?
Yes, that is correct, because
Okay.
it's currently, it's unconstructed, it's just bare ground.
Okay.
And I believe that was the condition that was. Number 7 is, and I specifically kept these out as 2 separate conditions. I didn't want to lump Big Sky Drive and Spring Street together. Just because they're 2 different roads, I feel that they need to be 2 separate conditions. So number 7 is dealing with Big Sky Drive being constructed, and number 8 is dealing with Spring Street being constructed, county road standards.
Okay.
So when you come to this cul-de-sac at the B1 and B2, where you take this frontage, you take frontage, off of B2. Is there any reason for that road to continue further, would that be northwest, to go out past Warm Springs Creek? And at that point, is this dotted line here, is that a future easement for that road? So if you did continue that road out, it went straight through there instead of shutting down to only 30 foot wide?
So, the dotted line that you're seeing, I assume you're talking about this one here. Right, just kind of,
I'm talking on the lot below.
Here.
Where that cul-de-sac stops right there, and then you got
Okay.
a dotted line across B1.
here.
Is that another part of an easement in case that road has to be continued out in that direction?
It's a possibility. You know, I think the owners, the developers simply wanted to preserve that right just in case. Obviously, if they're looking at crossing the creek, we're looking at bridge construction, so that could be cumbersome for them. But at this point, I guess maybe that's a better question for Bernadette. My theory is that the developers wanted to maintain that option. Because as it ends there at the cul-de-sac, there's no potential to move it any further northwest. And it does say access and utility easement for future development, is how it's identified.
Nicole, to the sheriff's comment, he expressed his concerns for the access easements through adjacent property owners as the last couple of years have caused his office numerous problems in responding to and dealing with access issues. He stated he would be more comfortable if these were actually designated roadways and not defined as an easement because of land. As land gets sold or changes hands, there's disputes. So with that, our regulations, is there anything that we should be aware of, or is there anything we can do to address the sheriff's concerns? I guess I'll just put it to you like that.
Yeah, certainly.
Let you clean up my question with a really brilliant answer.
Oh, no pressure. Not about brilliant. Our regulations do state that a driveway could be used for 2 lots, no more than 2 lots. So we really, with that being written into our regulations, what they're doing here is not, it's allowable. It's allowable to, I understand his concern because I've dealt with those same frustrations in my office. They're access easements, and I think a lot of times folks don't have an understanding of what an access and utility easement means. They feel as if this is my property, I'm going to build my fence on, connecting my 4 corners. What I try and explain to them, it's similar to living in town. You have a sidewalk, you have a boulevard. I don't get to fence that. You don't get to take ownership of it. You can maintain it, but you can't disallow people from using that sidewalk. So an easement is the same thing. So where I understand what the sheriff's concern is, because I've lived those and I've felt those concerns in my office, it's not disallowable. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we could require these developers to build all of these roads, but our regulations also state that a driveway can be used for 2 lots. So without removing that from our regulation, and again, fact checking it with MCA, which I'm not sure what MCA says as far as driveways. I'm sure that our regulations are mimicking them, but I do know our regulations definitely have that information.
And our regulations were vetted by Susan Swimley and Tara Depew, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Is there an allowance in here? There's no allowance for these lots to be subdivided. Is there covenants not allowing these lots to be subdivided?
No, there's nothing stated that these lots cannot be further subdivided. However, they would go back through the same process, and then they might have some road and access issues that they would have to contend with.
So if the owner of lot of B4 decided he was gonna subdivide it, he would have to make that access coming off of Spring Street into a 60-foot road.
Correct. Or something along the north, you know, and utilizing these access easements too. And building this 60-foot wide into a road.
One request I have, and I've made this request of all our subdivisions, we get the full appendix M
Yes.
for the final.
An appendix M is only for lots greater than 20 acres. So
Oh,
these lots will not, because I didn't bring my regulations with me, I'm sorry.
okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, we just haven't had any,
Nope.
many smaller ones. Okay,
But yes, that's been standard practice in my office for about a year and a half.
I know, thanks.
You're welcome.
So at the
So-
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
On this, it says 30-foot wide driveway easement serving lots B3 and B4 to be abandoned,
Where are you seeing this? I'm sorry.
down on the bottom of
Okay.
that, by the ledge. So if you're.
Are you in the book here?
It's right, it's on the very bottom of it.
Okay.
See, this one says 30-foot driveway easement serving lot, this one here says it's to be abandoned. And if you look on the large map, it does not say to be abandoned.
Sure.
So if you're abandoning that, then how are you accessing those two lots?
Mine does not say to be abandoned. Are you on tab number 4 in your book?
Yes, mine says to be abandoned as
abandoned.
well.
Interesting.
Can I clarify that?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
My error, after we submitted this, the landowners are going to go ahead and have the road, the subdivision road engineered and built to subdivision standards. And they want to get rid of that, but you have a future copy, that was, they were gonna abandon that and to build the road to county standards and use it as a subdivision road, taking into account what the sheriff said and plans that they want to move forward on just creating that as a road. And that's why the planning board had put in that one condition approval that Spring Street is built and engineered, or different, accesses provided by the Broadwater County standards, because we visited with the planning board that their plan was to go ahead and have that road engineered and built. And so I apologize, you got a future copy of where they will abandon that easement and use the regular subdivision road.
Thank you.
You bet. Sometimes I get ahead of myself.
Better to be ahead than behind. At the public meeting for the subdivision, was there any public in attendance? Did you get any letters? Was there any public comment?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So if they're going to that, they're going to abandon this access coming off of Spring Street. So does this driveway utility easement, does that have to become 60 foot, or does B1 and B2 don't access off of that driveway, they only access out of the cul-de-sac?
Yeah, they will just access off of this cul-de-sac, and it'll stay a 30-foot easement to prevent that from being a road in the future. So these could not be further subdivided without gaining some sort of future 60-foot wide easement.
So even though there's a possibility of future development, I'd encourage you still to just look at this plan as is. So with this large cul-de-sac and, you know, the 60-foot access, that still will not be constructed, or that's not a requirement to be constructed. It's a driveway access at this time for B1 and B2.
I guess the only other question I have is when we went through those conditions, as you said, that utilities would assume that they would be underground.
Because we can encourage that and we can request that, but we have no authority to tell Northwestern Energy where to put their power, or CenturyLink, or any utility. Unless you know of some authority that I don't know of. So that's why, you know, we would encourage
Later on,
them.
it says that they will be, does it not say later on that they will be
This is
underground?
yes, there's, yeah, so the way it states, this is a commission required covenant, 10C. Any additional replacement or relocated utility line shall be installed underground in accordance with county subdivision regulations unless otherwise determined by the utility provided. So again, you can make that request or that strong statement, if you will, to the future owners of the property, but if the utility company simply won't do that, then you can't force it.
According to MCA 763608 subsection 6, we have reviewed the impacts on agriculture that's addressed. There will be no lots are being removed, and there should be no interference with the movement of machinery. Agricultural water user facilities, that's also addressed in the findings of fact, and with the easement or the help me out, the set aside,
The setback?
setback, thank you very much. Local services, we've been discussing that, and it looks like there's minimal impact that isn't addressed, or no impact that's not addressed. Natural environment, we do have the pending report from the museum, and I expect we'll have that before final.
So I can speak to that. Are you talking about from the Historical Society? Correct, okay.
Yeah,
We've dealt with this on another subdivision. It was an older one, and I'm thinking it was the Crimson Bluff, so it was quite a long time ago. In any case, so what I have here is an email from Damon Murdo. He's the Cultural Records Manager at Montana Historical Society, and so I would just like to read his email to Bernadette, if I could. So he says, this is from Damon, he says, I would suggest that you contact the county to see what they would like you to do prior to having the inventory conducted. We, as in MHS, are just here to give our recommendations. Since the county is the permitting agency for subdivisions, it is up to them on what they want you to do. The reason we are recommending an inventory is that there has been no ground disturbance in the proposed project area before. The surrounding pasture lands have had several archaeological sites recorded in the past, so we are concerned that there may be some sites within this proposed area. So, MHS, and I've had this conversation with Mr. Murdo previously, not on this instance, but MHS is simply making the recommendation that a cultural resource inventory be conducted. They cannot force that issue, so it's up to you as the commissioners to determine if you want to include that as a condition of approval or not.
is that a costly and time-consuming process, do you know?
I do not, but I do believe that Bernadette has information on that,
All right.
on the cost and the time.
I don't know the cost of
Okay.
it, but yeah,
Sorry.
exactly, but it is costly to go out, you know, send someone out there and, you know, what they would do is look over the property. I don't know if there would be any excavating or anything, but to determine if there was. There is no actual old home site or anything else out there. I think they said that because they don't have any mappings of that area. And there's not necessarily anything there, they just don't have any record of it. But there is no, old home sites or anything like that on the property.
Okay. Would you read Mr. Murdo's email again?
In fact, I think I'll read this in chronological order if that makes more sense.
Sure.
So what I have here, this is a letter from Damon Murdo. This is dated October 19th, 2018, to Bernadette regarding the 380 Views minor subdivision. Dear Bernadette, I have conducted a cultural resource file search for the above cited project located in Section 14, Township 7 North, Range 1 East. According to our records, there has been one previously recorded site within the designated search locale. Site 24BW0818 is the historic Northern Pacific Railroad. The absence of more cultural properties in the area does not mean that they do not exist, but rather may reflect the absence of any previous cultural resource inventory in the area, as our records indicated none. It is SHPO's position that any structure over 50 years of age is considered historic and is potentially eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. If any structures are to be altered and are over 50 years old, we would recommend that they be recorded and a determination of their eligibility be made. Based on the lack of previous inventory and the ground disturbance required by this undertaking, we feel that this project has the potential to impact cultural properties. We, therefore, recommend that a cultural resource inventory be conducted in order to determine whether or not sites exist and if they will be impacted. If you have any questions, you can call or email Damon Murdo, Cultural Records Manager, State Historic Preservation Office. So, on Friday, October 19th, I have an email from Bernadette Swenson to Damon. She states, Damon, thank you for your response. You have recommended that a cultural resource inventory be conducted in order to determine whether or not sites exist and if they will be impacted. What does this entail and how do I go about doing this? This is the first time this has come up, so I would appreciate information on how I proceed or what we need to do. Thank you for any advice or direction in this matter. So then Mr. Murdo's email response to Bernadette, also dated Friday, October 19th. He states, I would suggest that you contact the county to see what they would like you to do prior to having the inventory conducted. We are just here to give our recommendations. Since the county is the permitting agency for subdivisions, it is up to them on what they want you to do. The reason we are recommending an inventory is that there has been no ground disturbance in the proposed project area before. The surrounding pasture lands have had several archaeological sites recorded in the past, so we are concerned that there may be some sites within this proposed area. Let me know if you have further questions. Damon.
So are there water rights on Warm Spring Creek?
I believe there are. I know there are downstream.
So these people up here aren't allowed to pull any water out of that creek?
Not
Or
unless.
destruct?
Right, not unless they decided to do that. Let's see. So the Goggins,
Higgins originally had it.
Higgins had it, and then they sold it to Goggins, who were 51 Ranch, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that how the property
yeah,
transferred?
Goggins was the son-in-law.
Okay.
So did that water right would have gone to Hinman's or would it?
Well, it stayed with, unless they severed at the time, it stays with the owners.
Yeah, everything in here, the abstract, they're staying with the owners of the property. So what we've got here in the preliminary plat application, it does show where it went from, well, and Summer, Mr. and Mrs. Summer, they own the Canyon Prairie Mansion. They have water rights from it also, but they're downstream. The 51 Ranch Company, and then the 51 Ranch is what portions of this property were that were transferred to the Heinemans, the water rights.
Oh,
Yeah, Goggins retains some of the water rights and
transferred
Higgins
some.
has some of the water rights. So they were divided up during the sale. But Heinemans are holding on to theirs for the remaining 207 acres. And the Goggins still have theirs in, shared with Watson's that just purchased another piece of their property.
And according to the application, they're not proposing to, they're not proposing any disposition of water rights. So, which is exactly what Bernadette said, so.
We also addressed the wildlife habitat, and public health and safety issues. So I think we've covered all the criteria, except I do think we need to follow Mr. Murdo's advice and recommend a cultural resource inventory. I understand there's no buildings out there, so hopefully that can be something that's not too onerous, not real expensive for the developers. But I think that just in case there are some teepee rings or dandy dancer rings, that they're at least aware of them, and we can follow whatever we need to if something is found like that.
And I would like clarification, and that's fine if that's what they wanna do. But I know in some of previous, surveys, the Historical Society says, go forward, but if anything is encountered during construction, to cease and notify them and then do one.
I'd be fine with that. Yeah, I'd amend my recommendation then
That would be
to
great.
have that kind of language, you bet.
Okay.
Our property ended up with a dandy dancers ring, and it's an asset to the property, and we're protecting it. So I can't imagine there aren't more along the railroad line. So, yeah, thanks for that. I don't want to make it onerous for someone, but I certainly want to protect any historic assets that we have.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that would be very fair.
I agree, thank you.
So this is, I'll have to find language for that, because Mr. Murdo's request is different. This is a different request than what he does usually put on subdivisions. So when we do have that language that states if, and I don't think I have it in here because this was a different or shouldn't say different circumstance. His recommendation is different than previous. In some applications, his letter would say, if in the event cultural resource is inadvertently discovered, SHPO, Montana State Historic Preservation Office will be contacted. So this one, he is making a different request. I just want to make that clear for the record too. That his request states that based on the lack of previous inventory, we recommend a cultural resource inventory be conducted. But I think if you were to put that condition in there, I can find language on previous developments where his requesting letter had different language. Am I making myself clear? I feel like I'm,
This is a
confusing the
stronger
situation, I'm sorry.
recommendation than we've
Right.
seen before, is
Mhm.
what you're
so
saying.
that's what I'm saying, yes, thank you for clearing up my statement.
So you made a motion to approve that?
No, I didn't, not yet. I do want to address the recommendation from Mr. Murdo. So I was just asking that be added. That's, as it's added in the findings of fact, that it be something we actually follow. So that was my recommendation. I like Bernadette's compromise, but I'm also concerned that this was a stronger recommendation from the MHS than we have previously had.
Bernadette, have you ever had any findings of historical stuff in any other subdivisions?
We have.
So, if they're gonna develop this and they're gonna develop this, if they do this, this inventory or of this one, are they gonna come back and require the same of this, or are they only gonna do that? If they don't find anything here, are they gonna come back and make them do it on this piece also?
I don't know that. I don't know, how MHS would look at that, Montana Historical
I wouldn't
Society.
think so, it's that big an area.
Right, they
would
may,
do it on both
I
tracks.
would think so.
and just to be clear, they're not, they have no authority to make this happen. Unfortunately, the weight of all of this lies on you folks to make that determination. Montana Historical Society can make the recommendation, similar to how the planning board can make these recommendations to you. But you're the ones who can say yay or nay, based on the information in front of you.
I'm not comfortable not taking Mr. Murdo's recommendation. What do you guys think, Mike?
His letter does leave it up to the county to require it.
Yeah,
It wasn't you have to have this done.
yeah.
I would almost think that since he normally doesn't request that, I would think if he's gonna request it, then maybe that's something we probably should do. So if they go in there and do find something, then what's the effect on the landowner if they go in there and find something?
Basically, it would be added to their database, and it simply should not be moved or removed. So, what they found, specifically the Crimson Bluffs, sticks out in my brain, that there were some teepee rings and some rock cairns that were discovered there. And so, just in building home sites, there was another one on the other side of the lake, and I can't for the life of me remember what the name of that one was, where some teepee rings were discovered there as well. And really, just what it does, as far as their building location, could make a difference. I suppose there's probably a workaround to work with MHS. I've never experienced it where people, adamantly wanted to put their home right here that would disturb those teepee rings. And I'm not saying that hasn't happened, I just have not been a part of that conversation.
What experience I've ever had is, I think Burnett said, you find something you're supposed to contact.
Mm-hmm.
And if they think there is a more serious thing, they'll come out there when you're doing this usually was on the spring work.
Oh, sure.
Where I was working, and sometimes they'd have somebody right out there.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them halt total development on the project until a thorough inventory is done. There was one in Missoula area along the river, and they halted the project for a couple of years while they did a complete and thorough, because it was discovered during that. So they can halt the project and do a complete inventory and excavation, whatever they feel like they need to do before development moves forward on it.
And that would probably depend a lot on what was discovered, I would imagine. I mean, if you're finding, dinosaur bones, it's probably a little different than a teepee ring, but
Dinosaur bones are worth money.
they're worth money.
Yes, Tim?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a real quick question, I'm not sure who can answer this or wants to. Under this particular issue with the historical discoveries, if you will, and not using the wrong word, this is coming forward as a recommendation only. So my question, I guess, is there a statutory rule in place that says, okay, we are going to just recommend this. This is up to the body of the county to make the determine whether they move forward or not with or without any discovery operation. How do they come back in, if you will, and say, okay, we think there might be something here, and now we're gonna force you to have a statutory ability for that to happen to a landowner? I don't know if I worded the question right, but they
You wanna know if
come
they
forward
have,
if
if
it's
they
a
have the authority to
recommendation.
say you can't do that because there's something
Yeah,
here.
I mean, under what authority can they come in afterwards, at the 11th hour, if you will, and say, now, wait a minute now, we've changed our mind. It's no longer a recommendation, this is a legal requirement.
I don't know if they can.
And I don't have an answer for that either. I don't know what their authority is. We've dealt with so few of these.
Well, evidently, if they shut that project down in Missoula, they must have some authority.
They must.
And that's why I was asking when you brought that up.
I do not
Of course,
know the
we're-
exact
that was talk about
authority,
the Missoula.
but, it's right outside of Missoula. It's a done project now, but, that was probably 15 years ago. I think it's Canyon Estates, but right before the Hellgate Canyon going into Missoula, there's a big subdivision and golf course right there along the river, on the right side of the highway going into Helena. But yeah, they shut that project down for 2 or 3 years while they did a complete inventory of the historic things.
And then I guess I do recall some of those things happening in Missoula under the subdivision rules of the city of Missoula and Missoula County having that authority, but I didn't know if the state historical society, if you will, had statutory authority to impose restrictions. That's the purpose and reason behind the question.
Well, we do, it's, the title is 763608, and that's what we're talking about now, so. You want me to repeat that for you, Tim? 763608.
So Laura, did you have a motion to follow Mr. Murdo's recommendation and have this historical inventory done?
No, I don't have a motion yet, I still am looking for discussion, I'm torn, to be honest with you. We have, for the first time that I've seen, a stronger recommendation for a cultural resource inventory. I agree with Bernadette, the property doesn't have any old barns, old homesteads, any historic home sites like that, but we don't know what's on the ground. We do know this area was a winter ground for the Crow Indians for hundreds of years probably, and I don't know what other tribes also came here in the winter. So apparently we've been a banana belt for quite some time. But what's there that we don't know of? I like the recommendation of putting something in, probably the commission-approved covenants,
Okay.
that states that if anything is discovered during construction, you must cease and contact MHS. But with this stronger recommendation, I'm not sure if that's enough. So that's where I'm at. I see the value of both sides, and I see that if something were discovered, say 5 years from now, dinosaur bones, a woolly mammoth, and we haven't bothered to follow the recommendation of MHS, that we could have a whole bunch of citizens mad at us for, quite simply, not doing our job. On the other hand, I think this is a good subdivision. I think it makes sense where it's at, makes a lot of sense. And want to be responsible and respectful to the subdeveloper and not put over onerous requirements on them. So that's where I'm at, and looking for discussion.
Well, I would think that if we require them do this on this piece, then it wouldn't come up on the other track. I'm inclined to believe that if you're gonna have activity here, if you have any activity here, it would probably show activity here. But if you didn't have anything here, I don't know why you would have it. So in the view of the subdivider, if you can get rid of this hurdle for this piece on this piece, I think you would do it the first time, and not have to worry about the second.
However, if people were coming out here and wintering because of the hot springs, and the hot springs goes all the way through, you can imagine that they might be on either side of that creek. One, water is life, and two, if it was warm back then, that would be pretty attractive in December and January. So just with this one subdivision, I'm just torn. Were you gonna say
I-
something?
Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering if the stronger recommendation is because there is nothing reported. And I don't know, perhaps another area stuff has been cited in the general area, and that's why the if. But I don't know the answer to that.
And it could be that because it's not cited, we're essentially doing MHS's job. Yeah, and maybe, I'm just not sure.
Can I read from from Damon Murdo's email again? And his reason for this, he says, the reason we are recommending an inventory is that there has been no ground disturbance in the proposed project area before. The surrounding pasture lands have had several archaeological sites recorded in the past, so we are concerned that there may be some sites within this proposed area. But then in his letter, he does state there has been one previously recorded site within the area, being the Northern Pacific Railroad, which we are all certain we know where that is. So his letter states that there's one. His email states the surrounding pasture lands have had several archaeological sites. I don't know what those are, because his letter is simply citing the Northern Pacific Railroad. That may or may not add to your confusion.
Yeah, you didn't help one bit.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I make maybe one suggestion that might, because of scheduling conflicts with planning board, you're only getting one look at this, because tomorrow is the deadline for action on this. I don't know if it would be amenable to your developers to say, okay, we're gonna give the county one more week. That will give Bernadette the opportunity to talk to Damon, maybe get some more clarifying information from him, Damon Murdo at MHS. We can also figure out, what does this mean? So what if something is discovered? First of all, how much does it cost? Generally, I don't, because MHS does not do the work. They are not the ones who perform this cultural resource inventory. You actually have to go and hire someone who's skilled in this profession, right? So what is the cost of that? I don't know if that will weigh in your decision at all, but at least that would answer a question that you had. And what does that mean? What does this mean long term? So I don't know that the Heinemans would be agreeable to that, but as an option to having that put in here as a condition, it might save them some money and time if you can be more comfortable with your answers. Does that make sense?
They would bear the cost.
They would have to bear the cost of this cultural resource inventory. Yes. That would be on them to pay for that.
I would like some more information if it's okay with the Heinemans. And I'm afraid that without more information, I'm going to lean to following the recommendation of Mr. Murdo. So with that, if we are under a deadline to make a decision today, we could make a motion with that caveat in it to, if it's agreeable with them, to revisit. In 2 weeks would be best, because we don't have a meeting scheduled.
Oh, that's
for
right.
next
Okay.
week. But I wouldn't be opposed to postponing to first thing Friday morning, just to address this, if you wanted to recess. I'm agreeable to that, so.
Because without the Heinemans being here, I don't expect you to go ahead and speak on their behalf, and say, yes, I'm gonna give you an extra 5 days or whatever. But if you were to put that condition in here now, you could add the condition, the commission required covenant, that if anything's discovered, so the way I jotted this down, if anything is discovered during construction, all construction shall stop and Montana Historical Society will be notified. As a commission required covenant. But then you could also add that potential covenant, prior to final plat approval, a cultural resource inventory shall be conducted. Which that's the one that's unknown, what does that mean for the developer?
Could we recess this subject to Friday morning, say at 8 o'clock?
I appointed at 8:45 and
Okay,
I'll, we have to do like 11.
that'll work for me, and then maybe, we could make the motion today to get more detail to amend the motion on Friday, if they're agreeable, and that way we're covered as far as our deadline. Does that work for
Oh,
you?
yeah, that would work for me.
Okay, so, with that then, I will move to grant preliminary plat to the 380 views minor subdivision, with, is that the right name? 380 views minor
Mhm.
subdivision, with keeping the recommendation of Mr. Murdo for a cultural resource inventory of the property. And I guess period at this point.
Is there any other discussion? Or is there a second?
Well, if he's moving, I guess I'd go ahead and second.
Motion second, is there any other discussion? Motion been made to recess this with the intent of researching Mr. Murdo's recommendation and the cost to the developers.
No, not yet. That motion was to grant preliminary plat with the recommendation of Mr. Murdo included.
Grant recommendation with the recommendation of Mr. Murdo. All in favor?
Can I make a
Yeah.
point here? Do you want to add the commission required covenant? as
No, I was
well?
gonna do that in a separate
okay, perfect.
motion, if that's all right.
Mhm. Sorry,
That's all right,
just wanna make
yeah.
sure I wasn't missing it, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries.
I would also move, pending further information regarding the cultural inventory, to include a commission-approved covenant to allow for, in lieu of a cultural resource inventory, a commission-approved covenant that if a potentially historic element is found, that all construction will cease and such findings will be protected.
Is there a second? All second. Motion been made and second to allow Commissioner's covenant to halt all construction if a historical is found. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same.
No,
And then-
because it's gonna take place anyway. If things found, it's gonna be done at that. We shouldn't even be spend all this time talking about this, my God.
And that would be, I think it's important to put in the motion, in lieu of the cultural resource inventory. And we are actually required by law to do this, and it's actually in, again, 76-3608, the natural environmental portion. So this is our legal responsibility. And so my last one would be just to request a recess to readdress the 380 views subdivision, if it's agreeable with the subdivider, Friday at 11 for that particular subject.
We'll recess this issue until Friday at 11 o'clock if it's agreeable with the Hennemans to delay.
And if they're not agreeable, then that second motion will die because it depends on their agreement, or, well, more information from Murdo at the recess meeting.
Okay, so we'll recess that until Friday. So next up is the Montana Department of Transportation, Austin
Thanks,
Bridge
Nicole.
Structure.
You're welcome.
Letter here from Corey Swanson, as I mentioned last week, I reviewed the proposed agreement between Broadway County and Montana Department of Transportation regarding the Tossin Bridge project. I followed up with MDT today to find out when they are going to submit the agreement to you for your approval. The main point of contact of the agreement has been out 6, so I'm not sure if you've already received it. If not, here's the attached to this document. Mr. Fred Bennett, the person I've been dealing with, informed me that MDT has submitted the completed agreement and all project documents no later than December 6th. I'm concerned that if we miss the December 6th deadline, this project may not go into this funding package and may be delayed for 1 or 2 years due to the legislative budget cycle. Therefore, I urge you to schedule this for your meeting next Monday and approve it so we can get the project in the MDT cycle this year. Corey Swanson. I guess we will entertain a motion to sign the MDT contract for the Tostin structures.
I
Just
make a
have a-
motion to do so.
I'll second, and I do have a question. We addressed this, I think it was July, and actually gave, our support for this. And now we kind of have an 11th hour, you guys gotta make a decision quick. We had to revise the agenda to put this on, so I'm wondering why there wasn't more communication between July and December 1st?
I think there was.
Okay,
When I'm looking at the email chain, it looks like the originals actually showed up in September. I think this has been ongoing. I don't know where the ball's been dropped, but some of this was sent in. I mean, I've got email chain sitting here where it was submitted on September 25th. And so it's been ongoing. At this time, we're sitting there with a January 24th letting. Quite honestly, this was due over a month ago. And so I don't know what happened, and I'm not really sure. They asked me to attend and kind of pick this up and get this thing rolling so we can complete this project. But it does appear that there has been some communication. I don't know where it got dropped, but I was asked if I would really pick this up and start running with it to get this project moving forward. I think it's a great project for the community. We've had a lot of positive response. I think we've taken all the comments and concerns, we've addressed them. I think it's a great project moving forward, so. That's why I'm here.
all right.
Okay.
Can you share who those emails were sent to?
Yeah, I think they're probably attached. I'm not sure if you have a copy of them sitting there.
Not in here, no.
So the first one, this is back on September 25th, Corey Swanson, C. Swanson, Broadwater County, and I guess that's what I'm seeing,
Was it Broadwater County?
Broadwater.mt.us is,
Oh, yeah, okay, so
Yeah.
that's the county attorney's email.
yeah, so
Okay.
if that's what I have, that's who it's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could include the full commission in the future,
Okay,
that way if something like this happens, we can jump in and say, hey, we've got a deadline coming,
yeah.
and hopefully not miss an opportunity and look at a 2-year delay.
Yeah, so anyways, there was a little email chain. I mean, I did make a copy before I left, but unfortunately, I wasn't on that one either. I'm kind of picking the ball up here, so.
So if MDT could include you, and then include the commission, maybe we can keep things rolling.
We'll keep it rolling. so.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Um,
I'm Joe Walsh, by the way, for those of you that don't know me. I've dealt with Laura and Frank on several issues, so.
and thanks for being here.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Motion's been made and seconded to sign the MDT contract for the Tostin Bridge structures. Any further discussion? Tim?
Do we have any costs that have been come up with on this at this point in time with this contract? They're part of it, that are just moving forward.
So You want me to grab it?
Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, attached to this is, there's some sections of roadway, and they really show the roadway that you currently maintain and what you will maintain in the future, and not much has really changed. The one thing that you will start to maintain, at least as a commitment to maintain, is the underpass. There's a trail underpass that was, it was a concern of the citizens when we were looking at this, and so it's just north of the bunkhouse. And so there's an underpass so that kids can go underneath without having to cross the highway. And so that would be more like day-to-day maintenance. As far as the lighting and stuff, I believe it says right in the agreement that we will pay for the lighting. If something ever was to happen with the tunnel itself, the pedestrian tube, we would be responsible for, but day-to-day maintenance would be on the town.
Yeah, mainly with the snow, the highway would be removing all the snow, but just like through, that ain't drifting into the tunnel.
Yeah, we don't have, our plow won't fit under there, so, you know.
Yeah.
So anyways, I don't really anticipate any problems, but,
I visited with the owner of the bunkhouse, and he clears out the parking lot with his four-wheeler and fire hall there, and he says, "Be no problem, we're gonna make a pass down through there."
Motion been made and seconded to decide the said agreement, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carries.
can I ask a question?
Yes.
If I was to stay after the meeting, can we get that signed? I mean, that's how urgent this is, so.
I think we're doing it right
Oh,
now.
perfect,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
So even though we're a month late, this won't delay the project, as long as we get it done
We will
now.
be constructing, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good, thank you.
Yes,
It's been a long time coming.
yes, it has been.
Yeah, just the ones, there's two.
And once I take the originals, I'll get ours signed and I will get copies back.
Okay. No, that's it.
Now they're putting up for, it's going up for bid now, I heard once is till March.
Well, the current letting schedule, I have it here, I have it on January 24th.
Oh.
January 24th of 19 for letting.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So if something changes, I can let you know, but
No, that's okay, I was just curious, because originally it was supposed to have been in July, wasn't it? And-
yeah.
And then we've been starting construction right about now. And that was the last I had heard, then all of a sudden I heard that it was gonna be till March, but,
Typically, once we have a winter letting, you know, you pretty much set the March, April timeframe for construction
Yeah.
with frosts.
Tim's.
What's that? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just a real quick question. I understand that the bidding process is moving forward and you're talking January, that third final, if you will. Do you folks have an estimate on the cost that's going into this project at this point? Since I know we've already spent quite a bit of money on that bridge in the county here in the past.
Yeah, I actually have one here, and it is an estimate because I don't have anything up to date, so it's about $38 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there last summer, they was talking 34, and then that probably didn't include getting this, all the ground. From what I understand, all that's been done now.